picture something for a second. When I say the title, Paradise Lost, what immediately comes to your mind?
Well, I mean, for most people, it's a very specific kind of dusty image.
Right. You probably think you know the story of Adam and Eve, or at least you know the basic idea of John Milton's massive 17th century religious epic.
Yeah, you picture an old poem about a forbidden apple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A forbidden apple, a talking snake, and a profoundly angry God.
It sounds like the kind of thing you'd be forced to read in a really stuffy literature class, right?
Oh, totally. And then you just immediately forget it the moment the final exam is over.
But the stack of sources for today's deep dive reveals something entirely different.
It really does. When you actually get into the text, it's a political thriller.
Yeah.
It is a literal sci-fi narrative that bends the absolute rules of time and space.
Which is wild for the 1600s.
Right. And unexpectedly, it might just be the actual blueprint for modern populist revolutions.
It genuinely defies every expectation a modern reader brings to it.
So today's mission for you listening is to unpack this 1667 masterpiece. We're going to peel back those centuries of dust and, look at the sheer, terrifying machinery humming underneath all that poetry.
We are going to explore the cosmic paradoxes of free will, the surprisingly farcical, almost slapstick nature of the war in heaven.
Which is still crazy to me.
It is. And we'll look at how a blind poet managed to create a villain so compelling that he inadvertently inspired real-world political philosophy.
Synthesizing the literary analysis, the political history, and the deep theology shows us exactly why this story still matters today.
Absolutely.
I cannot stress enough how wild and contemporary this text feels when you actually sit down with it.
It really jumps off the page.
But before we get into the devil's political strategies, which are fascinating, I want to get a sense of the sheer scale of the universe Milton built.
Right, the architecture of the whole thing.
Yeah. Our sources mentioned some really interesting details about the publishing history. It originally came out in 1667 in 10 books. But then, a few years later, in 1674, Milton revised it into 12 books, which is the standard version we have today.
Yep, the 12-book version is the definitive one.
What was the driving force behind that structural change? Like, why take a completed 10-part epic and chop it into 12?
That change actually reveals a lot about Milton's ultimate ambition.
Okay.
So a 10-book structure vaguely mirrors the layout of Elizabethan 5-act plays. Think Shakespeare, where you have a clear ascending and descending dramatic arc.
Oh, okay, I see that. Like a 2-to-1 ratio for the acts.
Exactly. But by redividing the text into 12 books, Milton was deliberately aligning himself with the ultimate classical epic of the Roman Empire.
Which is?
Virgil's Aeneid, which is famously 12 books long.
Ah, so it was a flex.
It was a massive flex. He is planting a flag. He's signaling to the reader that he isn't just writing, a basic biblical commentary.
Right.
He is writing the definitive English epic. He wants it to stand shoulder to shoulder with Homer and Virgil.
And the pacing within those 12 books is fascinating, too. The physical length of the books varies dramatically.
Yeah, that's it.
Like, the shortest one is Book 7, which is about 640 lines long, and deals with the creation of the entire world.
The whole universe done in a few pages.
Right. But the absolute heavyweight of the epic is Book 9, clocking in at nearly 1,200 lines.
Almost double the length.
And Book 9 is where the actual fall of man happens. So he breezes through the creation of the literal universe, but puts time under a microscope for the single moment a human being decides to eat a piece of fruit.
It creates an incredible narrative tension.
Yeah.
Milton slows down time and expands the text right at the moment of maximum psychological crisis.
He takes a few very brief chapters from the book of Genesis in the Old Testament.
Which is the source material here.
Right. And he blows them up into this massive cinematic universe.
And to achieve that cinematic feel, he utilizes very specific tools, the most prominent one being his use of blank verse.
Okay, I remember the term blank verse from high school English, but let's define that for anyone listening who hasn't been in a poetry class recently.
Sure.
What does that actually mean in practice, and why does it matter for this specific story?
Blank verse simply means poetry that is written in unrhymed iambic pentameter.
Unrhymed iambic pentameter.
Right. Iambic pentameter is a rhythm. It sounds like a heartbeat. Da-dum, 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 da-dum.
5 beats per line.
Exactly. Shakespeare used it constantly. But the key here is the unrhymed part.
Because usually epics rhyme, right?
Traditionally, yes. Prior to this, massive heroic poems usually relied on rhyme schemes to sound elevated and important, but Milton explicitly rejected rhyme.
Why?
Well, in a note added to later editions, he actually called rhyme the invention of a barbarous age and a kind of modern bondage.
Oh, wow. So the lack of rhyme is actually it's like a political or philosophical statement.
Precisely. Milton was a fierce advocate for liberty, political, religious, personal liberty. He saw the strict rules of rhyming couplets as a form of literary imprisonment.
That is so dramatic. I love it.
It really is. By writing in blank verse, he was formally declaring his freedom from those constraints. And he pairs this unrhymed rhythm with what critics call the grand style.
Which means what, exactly? Just using really big, intimidating words.
Well, partly. It's a combination of elevated vocabulary, incredibly complex, winding syntax, and just sustained majesty.
Sustained majesty. That's a great phrase.
He frequently uses Latinate sentence structures where the verb is pushed all the way to the end of a long, sprawling sentence.
Oh, so you have to really wait for the action.
Yes. It demands your full intellectual attention. The language itself is designed to feel monumental, mirroring the cosmic stakes of the story.
And he throws you into those cosmic stakes immediately, like from page 1.
He does.
He uses the classical epic tradition of starting in medias res, which means in the middle of the action.
Right into the fire, literally.
To me, this is exactly like walking into a movie theater right as the biggest explosion of the film happens on screen. You have zero context, and you are forced to piece together the entire plot backward while the shrapnel is still flying.
That's a perfect way to describe it. You are dropped right into the aftermath of a catastrophe.
Satan and his rebel angels have already lost the war in heaven.
They have already been cast down into the abyss. You are basically standing in the wreckage of a failed revolution.
But before Milton even drops you into that wreckage, he follows another crucial epic tradition, right? The opening invocation.
Yes, the invocation of the muse.
He calls upon a muse to inspire him, much like Homer called upon the Greek muses to help him tell the story of Achilles or Odysseus.
Except Milton doesn't call on a Greek or Roman muse.
Right, he calls on the heavenly muse, Urania. He is asking for divine inspiration because he wants to attempt something that he claims has never before been done in poetry.
He's aiming high. So high. His stated audacious goal for this entire project is spelled out right in the opening lines. He says his mission is to justify the ways of God to men.
Yeah, that's the thesis.
I have to push back on the sheer scale of that ambition, though. I mean, how arrogant or maybe how incredibly brave do you have to be to claim that you, a mortal guy from 17th century England, are going to act as God's personal defense attorney to all of humanity?
I mean, it sounds borderline megalomaniacal, doesn't it?
It really does.
But we have to look at what justifying the ways of God means in the context of Milton's own life and the broader theological landscape at the time.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Milton is taking on the ultimate philosophical paradox, the problem of evil.
Right. If God is good, why is there bad stuff?
Exactly. If God is all-powerful, omniscient, and entirely good, why does evil exist in the world? Why is there so much brutal, senseless suffering?
A question people still ask today.
Constantly. And Milton wasn't writing this from an ivory tower. He was writing this after experiencing profound personal and political tragedy. He was blind at this point, wasn't he?
He had gone completely blind. He had to dictate the entire poem to his daughters and assistants.
That is incredible.
Plus, the political republic he fought for and dedicated his life to had completely collapsed. The monarchy had been restored, and he was briefly imprisoned and in real danger of execution.
So he is a man sitting in absolute darkness, watching his life's work crumble, asking, why did God let this happen?
Yes, he is wrestling with the nature of the universe on the most profound level imaginable. He isn't putting God on trial to absolve him exactly. Rather, he is trying to reconcile human understanding with divine actions.
Okay, that makes it feel a lot more personal.
It's very personal. And to build that reconciliation, he constructs a universe based on strict hierarchy and order.
The great chain of beings.
That's the concept. The universe of Paradise Lost operates on a rigid, cascading hierarchy.
How does that break down?
Well, God the Father is at the absolute top, the supreme source of all things. The Son of God is equal in rank, existing as the active, executing agent of God's will. Below them are the intricate ranks of angels, archangels, cherubim, seraphim, and so on.
And then humans.
Right. Below the angels are human beings, Adam and Eve. Humans are placed over the animals and the natural world.
And at the very bottom.
At the very bottom, completely separated from the light and grace of God, is hell.
So it's a massive vertical system.
Exactly. And in Milton's universe, Harmony and peace are maintained through willing obedience to this hierarchy.
Everyone's staying in their lane.
Essentially, yes. Evil is simply the disruption of this order. It's the moment someone lower on the chain decides they want to move up and usurp a position that doesn't belong to them.
Which brings us to the ultimate rule breaker.
Satan.
Because to justify God's system, Milton had to create a worthy antagonist to challenge it. You cannot have a compelling defense without a brilliant prosecutor.
That's a great way to put it.
But he made Satan so charismatic, so compelling, and so undeniably eloquent that he inadvertently laid the groundwork for centuries of political rebellion.
He really did.
Let's look at that incredible opening in Book 1. Satan wakes up on a burning lake in hell. He is chained in a fiery abyss. His second in command, Beelzebub, is lying next to him.
Just a horrific scene.
They have just lost a cataclysmic war against the creator of the universe. They are physically ruined.
And a standard narrative would have the villain wallowing in despair at this point, right?
Begging for mercy, probably.
Exactly. They've been cast into a literal lake of fire by an omnipotent being. Defeat is absolute.
But instead of breaking down, Satan delivers some of the most famous and powerful speeches in all of literature.
They are masterful.
He looks around this absolute nightmare, this torture chamber, and boasts of his unconquerable will. He declares that all is not lost.
The sheer defiance of it.
There are a couple of quotes from the sources that just jump off the page. He tells his followers, "The mind is its own place and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven."
It is brilliant psychological framing.
And then he delivers his ultimate thesis statement. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven.
Those lines resonate so deeply because they appeal to a fundamental human desire for autonomy. Self-determination.
Yeah, nobody wants to be a servant.
Right. Satan is performing a masterpiece of rhetorical spin here. He is framing his catastrophic defeat not as a loss, but as a liberation.
Oh, wow.
He has been violently cast out of God's hierarchy, but he spins it to say, I am finally free from a tyrant. I would rather be the master of a wasteland than a slave in a paradise.
That is such a powerful message, even if it's coming from the literal devil.
And following these speeches, the fallen angels actually organize themselves. They don't just sit in the fire. They decide to build a massive capital city in hell.
Right. They build a city, and they name it Pandemonium.
Which is a term Milton invented for this specific text, actually.
Well, I didn't know that. I use that word all the time.
Yeah. It translates from Greek roots. Pan meaning all, and daemonion meaning demons.
So the place of all demons.
Exactly. But what's crucial is what happens inside Pandemonium once it's built.
Right, because it functions entirely as a political arena. They hold a massive council, essentially a democratic-style debate on how to strike back at God.
It's like a sinister parliament.
It totally is. You have different demons stepping up to the podium, delivering distinct policy speeches. One argues for open, violent war.
Well, yeah.
Another argues for quiet, covert sabotage. Another argues they should just build up hell's infrastructure and ignore heaven altogether.
It feels exactly like a parliamentary debate.
It really does. And this leads us to a fascinating extrapolation from our sources regarding the political angle of this poem. Satan essentially acts as an early populist figure.
The structural parallels to populism are undeniable here.
Break that down for us. What do we mean by populism in this context?
So populism at its core is a political approach that champions the common person against a real or perceived elite or establishment.
Right.
In the Pandemonium debates, Satan masterfully deploys populist rhetoric. He frames himself and the fallen angels as oppressed commoners, the victims of an authoritarian, out-of-touch regime.
And the ultimate elite establishment in this scenario is God.
Exactly. Satan's core argument is essentially, the system in heaven is rigged against us. The supreme monarch holds all the power. He doesn't care about our rights, and I am the only leader willing to fight for your true freedom.
Our sources point out that this specific dynamic, this framing of rebellion, heavily inspired the Enlightenment philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau a full century later.
Yes, the Rousseau connection is huge.
Rousseau's core concepts, the social contract, and the idea's general will, argue that the common interest of the collective should supersede a central divine right authority. How exactly do Satan's words map onto a philosophy like that?
Well, Rousseau argued that legitimate political authority comes only from a social contract agreed upon by all citizens for their mutual preservation.
Not from a king.
Right, not from a monarch who claims God gave him the right to rule. In Pandemonium, Satan creates a mock version of this. He appeals to the general will of the demons.
He actually holds a vote, right?
He does hold a vote. He uses the consent of the governed, his fellow fallen angels, to legitimize his own rule in hell, setting up a direct ideological countermodel to God's unquestionable top-down monarchy.
And those exact Enlightenment ideas, which Rousseau helped popularize, later became the ideological fuel for the French Revolution.
They absolutely did.
Now, I want to pause here and make something super clear to you, the listener. We are impartially analyzing the text's connection to these real-world movements.
Yes, very important distinction.
We are not by any stretch endorsing populism or the French Revolution or Rousseau's politics. We are merely tracing how Milton's literary framing of a rebellion mathematically mapped onto later political ideologies.
Right. We're looking at the structural history of these ideas, not taking a stance on them.
Exactly. But looking at this purely as an intellectual blueprint. It's incredible to see how the language of rebellion remains remarkably consistent across centuries.
The rhetoric doesn't change much.
But a massive question emerges from this for me. Milton was a deeply, profoundly religious man. He was a devout Puritan who wrote this epic explicitly to justify God.
True.
Do you think he intended to make the devil the original champion of democracy and the common man? Or is this just the classic problem of the villain getting the best dialogue? Like, did the character just get away from him?
You know, that's a debate that has dominated Milton's scholarship for hundreds of years.
I bet.
The Romantic poet William Blake famously claimed that Milton was of the devil's party without knowing it.
Oh, that is a fantastic quote.
It really is. Blake believed Milton's subconscious sympathies lay with the rebel, and there is strong historical context for this.
Because of his involvement in the English Civil War.
Exactly. Milton was a staunch, vocal anti-monarchist in real life. During the war, he supported the Parliament against King Charles I.
He even wrote political tracts defending the execution of the king, didn't he?
He did. So he intimately understood the language of rebellion. He knew exactly what it felt like to desire the overthrow of a supreme monarch.
He gave Satan the very rhetorical tools he himself had utilized in his own political pamphlets.
Yes. But we have to look deeper at what Milton is actually doing here.
Okay, what's the deeper layer?
Milton's God is entirely, perfectly just. He is the actual source of all life and goodness in this universe. An earthly king like Charles I is a flawed, mortal human claiming a divine right he doesn't actually possess.
Okay. The context is different because God is actually God.
Precisely. So Milton is demonstrating how a brilliant, manipulative entity like Satan can take the noble, beautiful language of freedom and twist it to serve a massive, destructive ego.
Wow.
Satan's democracy in hell is an illusion. He manipulates the debate in Pandemonium so that the demons ultimately vote for the exact plan he already wanted to execute anyway.
So it's a rigged system from the start.
Completely rigged. He is still a tyrant, just a populist one who knows how to work a crowd.
He's using the language of the people to install himself as a new dictator. That completely shifts how you read those early speeches.
It makes them much darker.
Okay, so we've explored Satan, the populist politician operating down in hell. But before he was in hell, he was a high-ranking general in heaven.
Yes, the timeline jumps around.
In Book 6 of the poem, the narrative flashes back. The archangel Raphael comes down to earth to warn Adam about Satan, and to provide context, Raphael tells the story of the war that got Satan banished in the first place.
And honestly, it is a remarkably bizarre conflict.
It is so weird. It's almost anachronistic.
It is a profound tonal shift from the dark, brooding political realism we just saw in hell. In this flashback, we learn the inciting incident of the rebellion.
Right. God elevates the sun, effectively declaring the sun as his viceroy and demanding all angels bow to him.
And Satan, consumed by pride and feeling passed over for the promotion, refuses. He manages to convince a full third of the angels in heaven to join his rebellion.
But there is one angel, Abdiel, who initially follows Satan into the rebel camp, but then realizes what is actually happening.
Abdiel's a great character.
He really is. He stands up to Satan in the middle of a crowd of hostile rebels and returns to God. Abdiel is the ultimate model of active loyalty. He proves you don't have to just go along with the crowd.
He exercises his free will perfectly.
But then the actual battle starts. The army of God is led by the archangel Michael, and this battle devolves into utter, chaotic absurdity. According to the text, the angels can't actually die.
No, they can't. Milton has to invent a sort of metaphysical physics system for this war.
A metaphysical physics system.
Yeah, he describes the angels' heavenly bodies as being made of a liquid texture, somewhat like fluid air. They are immortal substances.
So if an angel gets sliced in half with a broadsword, the two halves just instantly heal and merge back together.
Exactly, like cutting through water.
Because of this, the war feels almost like a farcical, zero-stakes game. They're swinging swords and thrusting spears, but no one is taking permanent fatal damage.
It escalates to the point where they literally end up uprooting actual mountains from the landscape of heaven and throwing them at each other across the battlefield.
I have to compare this to watching a modern superhero movie. You know those climactic scenes where two completely indestructible beings are just punching each other through skyscrapers?
Oh, yes, all the time.
There are no real stakes because you know neither of them can actually be hurt. It feels totally weightless.
The imagery is almost comical. You have divine beings chucking topographies at one another.
Right.
But then, in the midst of the stalemate, Milton introduces a chilling technological shift.
This is the part that broke my brain.
Satan realizes that swords, spears, and throwing mountains aren't going to win the war. So he innovates. He invents a terrifying new weapon, artillery.
The cannon. This is where the story suddenly feels like a sci-fi time travel narrative.
It really does.
Raphael describes this weapon to Adam in very mechanical terms. He calls them hollow engines long and round that shoot chain thunderbolts and hail of iron globes.
Very clearly describing a cannon.
And here is where Raphael breaks the fourth wall. While describing this artillery to Adam, who is, remember, a prehistoric man living in a pristine, innocent garden, Raphael turns and essentially talks to the future.
Right, he talks to the reader.
He tells Adam that someone in the future, if human malice ever abounds, will invent this exact weapon down on Earth to plague mankind.
It's a stunning narrative choice.
It's so jarring.
By putting 17th century gunpowder warfare, the cutting-edge weapons of mass destruction of Milton's own era, into a pre-creation cosmic battle in heaven, Milton shatters the timeline.
I struggled with this initially. I mean, why put literal cannons into a biblical epic? Doesn't that completely ruin the ancient mythology vibe he spent so much time building? Why introduce gunpowder to angels?
It feels like an anachronism, a glaring mistake in the world building, right?
Yeah, it feels like a typo.
But it is deeply intentional. That canon is the skeleton key to how Milton attempts to solve the absolute biggest theological puzzle in this entire text.
Which is?
The conflict between free will and divine foreknowledge.
Okay, wait. How does a canon solve the free will debate? I need this explained clearly, because the concept of foreknowledge usually breaks my brain entirely.
It's tricky, but let's break it down. By mentioning the canon and having Raphael address the future invention of gunpowder on Earth, Milton effectively collapses time.
Collapses time.
Yes. Think about what is happening in your mind as you read that specific passage. You are experiencing the past, the ancient war in heaven.
Right.
You are simultaneously experiencing the present of the narrative, Adam sitting under a tree in Eden, hearing the story.
Okay.
And you are experiencing the future, your own 17th century reality, if you're Milton's original reader, where cannons exist and are actively tearing up European battlefields.
Wow, so you are holding all three timelines in your head at the exact same second.
Precisely. He is forcing the reader to multitask time.
Why does he want us to do that?
This temporal compression is designed to elevate the reader to a God's eye view of time. In traditional theology, God does not exist on a linear timeline like we do.
Right, God is eternal.
God exists completely outside of time. He sees the past, the present, and the future simultaneously as one eternal, unchanging now.
Okay, that makes sense conceptually. And our sources highlight a really vital distinction here regarding how human beings think versus how angel or God thinks.
Yes, this is crucial.
They contrast discursive reason with intuitive reason. Can you break down the difference between those two modes of thought?
Absolutely. So discursive reason is the human mode of processing information. It is logical, sequential, step-by-step thinking.
Like solving a math problem.
Right. It's deductive. A leads to B, which leads to C. You read a book one page at a time.
Okay.
Intuitive reason, on the other hand, is angelic or divine. It is immediate whole comprehension. You don't have to read the book page by page. You just instantly comprehend the entire story from cover to cover in a single glance.
Oh, that's a great analogy. So you just know it.
Exactly. And because human beings are stuck in time, forced to use discursive reason, we really struggle to understand how God can know that Adam will fall without forcing Adam to fall.
Right. We think sequentially. We say, well, if God knows on Tuesday, that I'm going to eat an apple on Wednesday, then the script is already written. My fate is locked in today. I have no choice. I must eat the apple.
We equate foreknowledge with predestination. We assume knowing the future means causing the future.
But from God's timeless perspective.
From God's timeless perspective, using intuitive reason for knowledge is simply observation. Knowing something will happen doesn't mean you caused it to happen.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Imagine you are standing on a very tall hill overlooking a winding, intricate valley road. You see two cars speeding toward a blind intersection from different directions.
Okay, I picture it.
Because of your elevated perspective, you know they are going to crash. You see the outcome before they do. But your knowledge of the impending crash did not cause the drivers to step on the gas.
Right, they're making their own choices in the cars.
Exactly. They made their own independent choices. God is simply standing on the ultimate hill.
That makes perfect sense. God is observing the choice, not programming it. And Milton actually bakes this conditional reality into the poetry itself.
He really does.
The narrative is full of ifs. Raphael constantly tells Adam he will be happy if he remains obedient. The future is entirely conditional upon Adam's choices.
Yes.
And going back to Abdiel, the angel who left Satan's rebellion, Abdiel is the living proof that free will exists in this universe. He was in the rebel camp, he was surrounded by peer pressure and the momentum of the crowd, but he actively chose to leave.
He wasn't a programmed robot, he exercised his agency.
So how does the canon fit back into this?
What's truly masterful is how Milton uses the very structure of the poetry to trigger a flash of that intuitive understanding in you, the listener.
Okay.
He knows he can't give a human being actual omniscience. But by compressing time with the anachronism of the canon and layering the past, present, and future on top of one another, he wants you to feel what it's like to be outside of time for just a fleeting second.
It's a profound empathy exercise.
It really is. He does this so you can stop blaming God for the catastrophic choices humans make freely. He wants you to experience viscerally that God's foreknowledge and human free will can exist in total harmony, not as a contradiction.
He wants us to empathize with the perspective of God. That is an incredibly heavy philosophical lift for a poem.
It's massively ambitious.
But all of this cosmic architecture, all of the political debates in hell, the philosophy of time, the slapstick wars, it all funnels down to one hyper-specific moment.
The focal point of the whole epic.
Satan brings his rebellion out of the abyss, flies past the gates of the universe, and heads straight to Earth, targeting the crown jewel of God's creation.
Yes, and Satan's infiltration of Eden is just a masterclass in psychological manipulation and deception.
He doesn't just walk in the front door.
No, he actually manages to sneak into the solar system by tricking the archangel Uriel, who is stationed on the sun, to guard the new universe.
How does he trick an archangel?
Satan disguises himself as a cherub, a lower-ranking, innocent-looking angel, and pretends he's just a curious youth who wants to marvel at God's new world.
And Uriel just buys it.
Well, Uriel, being pure, unfallen, and completely grounded in truth, literally cannot comprehend the concept of hypocrisy. He simply cannot perceive a lie, so he happily points the way to Earth.
That's fascinating. Innocence as a vulnerability.
Exactly. So Satan lands in Eden and begins his surveillance of Adam and Eve.
And Adam and Eve at this point are living in perfect innocence. They tend the garden, they have open conversations with angels, they have a flawless relationship with each other.
It's paradise.
But then, on the fateful day, Eve suggests a change in their routine. She suggests they divide their labor.
Which seems innocent enough.
Right. She argues reasonably, if we work separately, we can prune more of the garden, manage the overgrowth, and get more done.
Very pragmatic.
Adam is highly hesitant, though. He knows they were explicitly warned by Raphael that an enemy is lurking somewhere nearby. He wants them to stay together for protection.
But he ultimately respects her autonomy.
Yes, her free will. He agrees to let her go work in another part of the garden alone. And Satan, who has now possessed the physical body of a serpent, finds his opening. He finds Eve isolated.
And the temptation of Eve is not a simple magical coercion.
No, not at all.
Satan does not cast a spell on her. It is a highly sophisticated rhetorical manipulation. Satan, in the guise of the snake, begins by flattering her vanity.
He lays it on pretty thick.
Very thick. He tells her she is a goddess among creatures, meant to be admired by all. But more importantly, he deploys deceptive, discursive logic.
He claims that he, a mere animal, ate from the forbidden tree of knowledge, and instead of dying as God warned, He gained the ability to speak and reason.
He presents himself as living proof that God's rule is a lie.
He provides empirical evidence. I mean, it's a talking snake.
He argues that God is keeping the fruit from them not to protect them from death, but to keep them subordinate and ignorant.
He's using that same populist rhetoric from hell.
Exactly. He promises that if she eats it, her eyes will be opened, and she will elevate her status on the great chain of being. She will become like a god herself, possessing ultimate knowledge of good and evil.
And Eve, who is curious, flattered, and fundamentally persuaded by what seems to be undeniable proof, reaches out and eats the fruit.
The universal hierarchy is breached.
And the text says the earth literally groans when she takes the bite.
It's a cosmic tragedy.
But here is where the story gets intensely human and honestly highly relatable to me.
Adam's reaction.
Yeah. When Eve brings the fruit back to Adam and tells him what she has done, Adam is horrified. He's not tricked by the snake's logic. He knows exactly what this means.
He knows she has broken the one rule and is doomed to die.
But he chooses to eat the fruit anyway.
He does.
He eats it out of sheer love for Eve. He decides he literally cannot bear the thought of living eternally in a perfect paradise without her. He would rather die with her than live without her.
It's very poignant.
I have to push back on the traditional theology of this moment, though. The tragedy of Adam's choice is just aggressively romantic.
It really is.
It makes his action feel significantly less like a malicious sin and more like a beautiful, tragic human sacrifice. He chooses love over obedience. How is that inherently evil?
It is deeply, profoundly romantic, and that is precisely what makes it so tragic within Milton's theological framework.
How so?
Well, Adam's love for Eve is good. It is a divine gift. But his love for God is supposed to be greater. By putting his creation, Eve, above the Creator, Adam breaks the hierarchy just as surely as Satan did, but for a different reason. Satan fell out of pride and a desire for power. Adam falls out of an excess of earthly passion. He lets his passion overrule his reason.
And the consequences of this inverted hierarchy are immediate and devastating.
The perfect innocence of the garden shatters instantly.
They don't drop dead physically in that exact second, but they die spiritually. They experience lust, shame, and guilt for the first time. They desperately cover themselves with leaves.
And immediately, the harmony of their relationship dissolves into hostility.
Right. They start playing the blame game. Adam blames Eve for leaving his side. Eve blames Adam for not stopping her.
And then the Son of God descends to Eden to judge them. The punishments mirror their actions perfectly.
Because Adam listened to his wife over the command of God, the ground is cursed. He must now endlessly labor in harsh weather, fighting thorns and thistles just to pull food from the dirt.
And because Eve led her husband into sin, she will suffer pain in childbirth and be placed under Adam's rule.
Just a total collapse of their perfect world.
And Satan, who has been watching the fallout, believes he has won the ultimate victory.
He thinks he actually beat God.
He thinks he has permanently ruined God's master plan and corrupted humanity forever. He slithers back to hell, returns to the great hall of pandemonium, and prepares to deliver a massive, triumphant speech to his followers about his brilliant conquest.
But as he stands at the podium and waits for their rapturous applause, he hears nothing but a terrifying hissing sound.
This is one of the best moments in the epic.
God's judgment reaches down into the abyss, and in a moment of absolute devastating poetic justice, Satan and all the rebel angels are instantly transformed into hissing snakes.
They are stripped of their voices, their powerful rhetoric, and their false nobility. They become the very animal Satan used for his deception.
It's an incredible reversal of fortune. The great orator reduced to a reptile.
It really highlights the emptiness of his rebellion.
But the story of humanity doesn't end with a punishment. It doesn't end in despair. And this brings us to one of the most profound, counterintuitive concepts in our sources.
The felix culpa.
Exactly. The fortunate fall. Before Adam and Eve are permanently cast out of the garden, the archangel Michael is sent down to earth. He puts Eve into a peaceful sleep, and he takes Adam up to a high hill to show him a vision of the future.
And it is a deeply brutal, uncompromising vision.
Michael shows Adam the immediate, horrific consequences of his sin. Disease, war, murder, tyranny, Noah's flood. Adam is forced to watch the unbroken misery of human history unfold, and he's crushed by the guilt of knowing he caused it.
But the vision doesn't start with suffering.
No.
Michael reveals the ultimate endgame. He shows Adam that out of this long line of human suffering, eventually, God will send his son. Jesus Christ will be born as a human, will suffer, and will sacrifice himself to redeem mankind from the very sin Adam just committed.
This introduces the core theme of the fortunate fall. Yes, the cosmic hierarchy was broken. Yes, unbelievable suffering, pain, and death entered the world.
True.
But without the fall, humanity would never have experienced the ultimate depth of God's mercy, grace, and redemption.
That's the paradox.
If Adam and Eve had just stayed in the garden, pruning bushes and naming animals forever, they would have been innocent, but they would have been entirely ignorant of the depths of divine love.
The evil that Satan brought into the world is ultimately transformed by God into an even greater good. Satan's victory is completely hollowed out and weaponized against him.
That is the very essence of Milton attempting to justify the ways of God.
He is arguing that God is so powerful and so fundamentally good that he can take the worst possible outcome, rebellion, sin, and death, and weave it into a tapestry of ultimate transcendent salvation.
The brokenness of humanity becomes the very vehicle for divine grace. Adam and Eve are forced to leave the perfect security of the Garden of Eden, but they leave with hope.
They leave with a promise of future restoration. They walk out into the harsh world, hand in hand, ready to face history.
What a monumental arc.
Yeah.
We started with Satan staging a brilliant populist uprising in the demonic parliamentary halls of Pandemonium.
We watched immortal angels fight a slapstick, absurd war with uprooted mountains and futuristic artillery.
We waded through the mind-bending philosophy of temporal compression and intuitive reason to understand how our free will and God's foreknowledge can coexist without contradicting each other.
And it all culminated in a single, profoundly human bite of an apple that shattered a perfect world, only to set the stage for a much deeper, more complex redemption.
It's an unparalleled exploration of a text that has quietly shaped so much of our cultural, political, and intellectual landscape.
It really is.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Okay.
Milton wrote this massive, beautiful, intricate epic about a flawless paradise that humanity tragically lost. But think about the nature of that perfection for a moment.
What do you mean?
Well, if perfection means absolute stasis, a pristine world where nothing ever changes, no one ever grows, no one ever faces adversity, and no one ever truly has to make a difficult choice between right and wrong.
Right.
And if it actually takes a painful fall to experience true grace, deep knowledge, and the messy, beautiful reality of free will, was the Garden of Eden ever truly meant to be our permanent home?
Well, why?
Or was it just the beautiful, fragile incubator we were always destined to break out of in order to become fully human?